Well, welcome everyone to this virtual panel discussion, Impact from the Ground Up. I am Sachi Shenoy. I'm a Global Washington board member and also co-founder principal of Radiant Data. I will be your moderator for this session. A quick note on Radiant Data and the work that I do full-time. Radiant enhances the data capabilities of mission-driven organizations, primarily those that focus on financial inclusion and economic equity. And in that vein, I am incredibly excited to introduce you to our panelists today, who are advancing financial inclusion through locally led development. Please help me welcome Rina Soni, Country Director for Heifer India, Ruth Mensah, who is Regional Manager for VisionFund International, and Shruti Goel, who is co-CEO of Upaya Social Ventures. Now, in the interest of time, because we have a lot to cover, I am not going to walk through their very extensive bios, which are all provided in the Whova app for your review. But I will say before we dive in that this panel perfectly complements the Goalmakers conference. Our conference theme this year is Advancing Social Impact in a Rapidly Changing World, with a specific lens on exploring how our member organizations are building hyper-local resilience and adapting to all of those shifts. So all of our speakers today are planning to share very concrete examples of proximate leadership, what it means to really be embedded in the communities that you are serving, the barriers they face, and actionable recommendations they have for others who are working to support economic resilience. So we have a very rich conversation teed up for you today. So with that, let's dive right in to our opening question and get to know our panelists. I'd love if each of you could spend a few minutes and really help define what does locally led development mean in the context of your work? Why is it essential for fostering sustainable change? And if you could, maybe touch on why is locally led development important, especially now at this point in time? And Ruth, I'd love to start with you.
Sure. Thank you, Sachi. Hello, everyone. It's a real privilege to be part of this panel to share the work that my team and I are doing at VisionFund International in collaboration with the NGO World Vision. If you're wondering what VisionFund is actually World Vision microfinance service providers. So how would I define locally led development in the context of my work? When I think about locally led development, I see it as empowering households to take their own progress. It's about listening to their needs and building on their strength and letting them lead the way. With our fast load product, our ultimate goal is to improve the lives of million children in rural areas. And for that, we are using as a lever an existing community-led financial system called the saving groups. These groups are largely composed of women, and they are a safe place for people to save money and access small loans internally. They are a starting point for building financial independence and also for creating opportunities in places where traditional financial systems simply don't reach. And these groups are self-managed and usually composed of 15 to 30 members. As you can see, the saving groups exemplify community-driven systems. And why is that? Well, because members pool saving together, provide internal loans, but also create some sort of safety nets for emergencies. And we have seen for the past years that, well, top-down solution often miss the nuances of local realities. And with our fast loan product, we want to flip the model. And to do that, we put communities in the driver's seat. With the loan product, we strengthen the saving group model by injecting money into the saving group capital. And by that, we are enabling the members to have bigger investment capital for their income generating activities. Another strategy that we are using is that we are recruiting our fast field officers and supervisors directly from the communities that we serve. And it's truly beautiful to see how it's invested that staff is. Recently, I've met Jainaba, who is one of our female field officers in the newest Senegal place where we are providing the fast loan. And she was really inspiring, and I was truly moved by what she mentioned when I asked her why she actually took the job. She shared how her tough childhood taught her the power of a helping hand and a little hope. And now she's giving back, determined to create the same opportunities for others that she once received. And her passion, well, embodies everything that our fast loan stand for and our choice to go with the community-led development opportunities.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ruth. Rina, over to you.
Yeah. So first of all, it's an honor and privilege. So thank you, Global Washington team. And this topic of locally led development in context of my work here in Heifer, India, is like I would say the cornerstone for fostering transformative and sustainable change. Sachi, like when you started the panel, you mentioned that in this rapidly changing world, so at Heifer, we recognize that this world, as we call, and we are all familiar with the acronym that James Cassio has introduced to us, that this world is a Bani world. Where it's like stands for brittle, anxious, non-linear, and incomprehensible. So today's environment is marked by, as we say, increased fragility of our ecosystems. There is widespread anxiety about future, and there is increasing complexity about the systems and non-linearity of thinking. So in such a world, at Heifer, we strongly feel that impact cannot be imposed from outside. It has to be cultivated from within the communities. So for us at Heifer, what we recognize is that the communities are not just recipients of these interventions or aid, but they are these a part of this vibrant ecosystem with the unique identities. So giving an example, like whenever we are developing our program and when we were developing one of our goat value chain program based in Orissa, the requirement that has come from the funding agencies was to have a model where we had self-help groups and where we had individual participants. But what the donor agency talked about was having this distributed at the self-help group level. But what the communities, the insight that was shared by them, that the deployment has to happen at household level. So when we heard this and when we talked about this, so what happened was that in this programming that we were able to do, it was a mega success, so much so that later on the integrated tribal development agency for this primitive tribes included this in their larger government program, and we were able to bring about a shift in the policy. So for us, this in locally led development is about trusting the wisdom and agencies of communities so that they are architects of their own future. And it's like moving away from the model that that they don't know their solutions. So and I feel that this locally led development, Sachi, is such an urgent thing as we are talking, because of the challenges of our area. when we are looking at climate change, when we are looking at inequality, when we look at, pandemic, the fragile ecosystem. So this is what we are, this is also driving the urgency for driving this locally led uh, development. And like we feel that if, this development has to happen, it has to happen closer to the ground. And the deeper the roots that are closer to the ground, the more lasting is the impact.
Absolutely. Wow. Thank you, Rina. And Shruti, over to you.
Thanks, Sachi, and thanks, Global Washington team, for this opportunity. I represent an organization called Upaya Social Ventures, and we define ourselves as impact first investors, and we are fighting poverty through dignified jobs. How we are doing this is by investing in local entrepreneurs, local entrepreneurship models, which are able to create good jobs, high quality jobs for those living in extreme poverty. Just to give you a flavor of the kind of investments that we make in terms of equity or quasi equity instruments, we have invested in around 41 companies now and made investments in sectors like waste management, agriculture, artisans, rural manufacturing. And that's why I'm saying this is that that's where these are the companies which provided us the local solutions which are actually creating good, dignified jobs and solving a lot of problems for communities and families. To what Rina said, be an architect of their own future. So I think that's what speaks to me when I talk about uh, locally led development. And for us, it's at three layers here at Upaya. One is at the job holders level, or the person who's not a beneficiary, who is he or she is a job holder who's participating equally in the economic process in activating the local markets or the local ecosystems. They're not part of a need. They are providing their capabilities. But how do you enable those capabilities to come in is what at Upaya we are very keen on, and that's where we see a lot of local power unlock itself. Uh, Also, job creation as a local solution is very powerful in terms of unlocking um, community resources, unlocking agencies, unlocking barriers across gender, climate, education, hunger. So those kind of things are where we see a lot of local agency play a very, very important role. The second layer that I want to talk about is supporting local entrepreneurs and local entrepreneurship models and how they they may be different from a top-down approach that Ruth was mentioning. A very simple example is like how one of our portfolio companies decided that they realized that their job holders need income monthly, not monthly, but twice a month because they are so poor that they can't go beyond 15 days. But those were decisions they were able to make, and they realized it because they're talking day in, day out with the communities, and those changes could be made very fast. Some of the other things that we see are the entrepreneurship models which are embedded in the local context and are able to pivot faster, because I'm also talking about early stage models, and they're able to pivot faster, uh, pivot into different regions um, within a particular geography. So those that is very powerful, I think, to make the systems nimble but effective and responsive. And the third layer is for us as a source of capital or capital providers, where does our leadership lie? So, as Upaya, this year has been pretty pivotal because we shifted our own leadership to India completely. And we are still, we are seeing a lot of positive changes in terms of how we are able to build the narrative, build the trust building process, and I'll speak about it later. But that's something I think is also another lever to bring us closer to what is locally led development. Thank you. Back to you, Sachi.
Thank you, Shruti. And thanks all of you for those opening statements and just giving us a quick glimpse into the fascinating work that you are all doing and furthering. What you all probably heard and got excited by, as I did, is all the organizations represented here have a strong belief in local. We hear the themes of agency and, of course, coupled with urgency, urgency of just the times we are in. And there is a need to manage local solutions, really give them the support they need. There's also a desire to maybe monitor program effectiveness and certainly work to connect capital and resources to help these local solutions really thrive. And so now I'd like to dive a little bit deeper into each one and have our panelists really explain how they make locally led solutions work to their fullest potential. And maybe, Rina, we can start with you. Can you please tell us a little bit more about your community-centered finance models? Specifically, how does Heifer's approach combine social and market capital to build resilience, especially for smallholder farmers?
Yeah. So, Sachi, at Heifer, we have a community development model, and that is based on a participatory approach to rural development. And we call it the value-based holistic community development model. And this model that we have talks about sustainable development as a transformative process, which is based on understanding of the people and the communities that we work with. And our value-based holistic community development model is based on the 12 cornerstone values and principles. So when we start any program, it is with this program approach that we reach out to the communities. We work with them in terms of building the social capital, but this social capital is not the only thing that is required, but this is the bedrock. Because if we feel that if a personal transformation happens, because at the community level in their hearts, then they are able to imbibe and take on whatever things that you layer with. It's like sowing, it's like getting the soil bed ready, and once you put anything in that fertile soil bed, it's going to flower and mushroom. So with that approach, we work on the value-based holistic community development model and on this personal transformation model. That's first step that we do. Once this is achieved, then we also layer it with our market capital. So when I say, what do you mean by market capital? So giving you an example, we work with smallholder farmers, and smallholder farmers have backyard poultry as one of the value chains where we are supporting them. So when we are working with these communities and we are working around the backyard poultry model, when we have layered the value-based holistic community development model, we also layer it by investing in organizations which are going to develop these value chains. So Heifer has a impact capital, Heifer Impact Capital, and through that impact capital, we invest in pro-poor value chain. So when we are working with the farmer in a district in Odisha, example Keonjhar or Mayurbhanj, we are also ensuring that the produce of the farmer that they are rearing also has a ready market. And that is where the funds like Heifer Impact Capital come into play, where we invest. So for example, in India, we have invested in an organization by name of Zap Fresh, with this objective that they are developing the backyard poultry value chain and product line for these farmers. And this is a ready-made solution that our farmers get. That's the second thing. The third thing that we do, when we are looking at this model, in each of our program, we have a passing on gift, approach programming. So any input that is given to community, they pass it on. And our global MEL data shows that any input that is put in any community is passed on at least 9 times plus. So all our project participants from recipients, they become donors, and in a way we are promoting grassroots philanthropy through this approach. So that is how we ensure that our programs are sustainable. We are carrying them forward, and these programs are like designed by the community, for the community, and for their benefit. So that's how our programs are designed, and that's how we bring in this thing. This is also helping us increase the livelihood, and this is having an impact on reverse migration. So there is a story of Ajay Sahani, who went to Hyderabad. And to all our audiences who would be there, Hyderabad is a city which would be like California, but he was a migrant. He was a daily wage earner there. When COVID happened, he came back, and his wife was part of the self-help group that we were working, that we were working with. Then he got associated in this poultry farm business, and today he has not gone back to his work there, and he is looking at expanding this, not only looking at poultry, but now is also looking at goat, and is very confident in terms of getting a loan to expand his business. So this is how we work. So over to you, Sachi.
Thank you for that, Rina, and especially for that last example, because certainly locally led development also includes themes like reverse migration and really keeping communities whole. So I really appreciate your point on that. Ruth, if we can turn to you, I'd love to talk more about some of the themes you mentioned, namely community level financial inclusion. Can you talk a little bit more about the significant barriers that you see to financial inclusion in the communities you serve? And then talk a little bit more about the Thrive program, the FAST product that you touched on. How do those really address the challenges of maybe lack of financial inclusion?
Well, imagine being part of a rural saving group in Tanzania and pooling resources with your neighbors to save for emergencies, for example, or for small investments. But even with your best efforts, the group's funds just aren't enough to meet everyone's need. That is where FAST comes in. And it really bridges the gap and unlock new opportunities for the group members. Let's take the example of, let's call it Goalmakers, a saving group in Zambia that had a $3,000 share out in their previous cycle. Basically, the share out is the total amount of money distributed back to members at the end of a cycle, a saving cycle. Why is it interesting for us? Let's take to our God Bless group. As a member, I meet the group every week, and every week I have the possibility to save a certain amount of money, let's say $50. Those $50 are the value of one share into the saving group. After all the group members save their money, the amount of money of the saving money goes into what is called a cash box. I can also, as a member, during a meeting, borrow from the cash box some money internally, which cannot be higher than my savings. So I will have to repay that internal loan with generally a 10% interest fee, generally. So all the interest fees paid by the member are increasing the group savings in the cash box, right? At the end of the cycle, the saving cycle, which can be from 9 to 12 months, a calculation will be done to determine the final amount available in the cash box. That is what we call the share out. So that amount includes the saving group's savings, I'm repeating myself, and any fees collected during the overall cycles. So based on the total numbers of share accumulated by the group throughout the cycle, a calculation is also done to determine the new value of one share. Remember, one share was that $50 that I put it into the cash box as a saving. So this new value of the share is then multiplied by the number of shares held by each member to calculate the final amount each member receives. So as a member, maybe I should have received, let's say, $2,500, for example. But with all the fees and all the amount saved by the group, now at the end, I can receive $3,000. So the problem is that the God Bless group that is having a 3,000 share out dollar amount last cycle can hit a certain ceiling. Because as a member, I would like to invest in my income generating activity, but the amount that I am receiving is not enough to cover all my costs. And what is interesting for us as VisionFund is that we can inject into the cash box a certain amount of money based on the level of the last share out group cycle. So that God Bless saving group that had a $3,000 share out last cycle can now have access to a $1,500 fast loan. So VisionFund is injecting that amount of money into the cash box as a loan, external loan, with a lower interest rate than the one used by the group. So what we are doing is, why are we doing that? Because we have realized that those saving groups are powerful tools for financial inclusion, but they also lack some opportunities. And with FAST, we want the members to be able to achieve what they're planning to, and also to see a certain growth. Members usually use the money that they're receiving to invest it in higher quality seeds, for example, farming equipment or small business venture. And that amount can boost their economy, but it does not just help them individually for the household, it also strengthens the whole community. Remember, a saving group is composed of a lot of people. So the beauty of our system is that with FAST, we are not also working alone. I mentioned earlier World Vision, and VisionFund is partnering with World Vision on the Thrive program that Sachi you mentioned. So it's an 8-year initiative across Africa, Asia, and Latin America. And what we are doing is that Thrive actually lays the groundwork by helping communities and households to build empowered mindsets by training them on topics like local value chain development, for example. They're also training them on what we call the S4T methodology, which is the saving for transformation methodology, and also by forming saving groups. So our goal is really to transform them into vehicles for growth. And together, Facet Thrive create a certain cycle of empowerment where communities can reach beyond their initial capacities. And here are what numbers tells us. FAST has reached over 12,000 groups across 10 African countries. And we have disbursed $8 million loans. what also we have collected as a result based on our recent impact survey is that 88% of the members reported an improved analysis on childcare, for example, and financial independence. And I love that example of Namzi, a 52-year-old mother of 6 in a village of Ghana. And she actually took her first loan this year on her saving group, the fast saving groups. And she used it to buy fertilizer for her farm and restock her shop with essentials like grain and toiletries. And the result that she mentioned is that has been a life-changing situation for her because her sales have grown by 30%. And with the extra income, she can now pay for children's school fees and provide for their needs without, well, that constant financial worry. So Namti also tells us that with that loan, she has lifted a weight off her shoulders and given hope. And she dreams of opening a bigger shop to support her community. So FAST and the Thrive program is more than a loan or just a program. It's also about giving people like Namzi the tools to actually create a better future for themselves and for their families. And let me end this by saying that such interventions are vital for breaking the cycle of poverty and for fostering long-term community growth by contributing to the broader global resilience effort that all our organizations are doing with those concrete examples.
Well, thank you for that, Ruth, and also for walking through those really compelling examples. The one thing that really struck me about what you were saying is how VisionFund looks at augmenting things that the community is already doing. It doesn't purport to replace them or come in with solutions, but just through that little bit of augmentation, it can really catalyze, and maybe produce outcomes that may not have been completely possible before. And so I guess in the spirit of catalyzing, if I can use that word, Shruti, I'd love to turn over to you and dive deeper into catalytic capital and what that means in Upaya's context. So would you mind talking a little bit more about how you see catalytic capital driving systemic change in the communities where you work?
Yeah, thanks for that, Sachi. So at Upaya, we work through a model which we call the recycling philanthropy model. Now, how that works is that we have our grants that we receive pooled in the philanthropic capital that is received into a pool very similar to what a VC fund looks like. And from that, we have made investments into impact first entrepreneurs in enterprises in India, which are often the missing middle companies. And when I say missing middle, it means these are companies which are too big for microfinance and too small for commercial banks or other traditional funding channels. And that's where our funding, the philanthropic funding, comes into picture to set the wheels moving. With this funding, with this kind of seed or early stage funding that we provide to these companies to fight poverty with creating jobs for those living in extreme poverty, we start with not just investment in terms of financial, but also non-financial support. So there's a lot of non-financial support, technical assistance that goes into each of our investments, each of our partners, which includes financial management systems, working with human resource development issues, or just market linkages, marketing, communication, impact reporting, impact measurement. So those kind of services are what we provide at Upaya, along with financial investment. Now, once that is done, we work with each of our partner companies to help them scale in terms of their commercial viability and the impact viability and improving the impact potential. And for impact potential, the way we look at is both the scale of jobs created for the poor and the quality of jobs, which is measured. We have a full framework on 5 dimensions of impact on how we measure dignity in jobs, in terms of income quality, how they perceive themselves in communities after they get the job, financial resilience, support at work, etc. So once these are done through Upaya, what we are seeing is the portfolio companies that we have gone on to raise 14x capital after our investment. There are 44,000 jobs created till date with 41 investments made. 55% of those jobs have been created for women. 50% of our portfolio is women-led. The founders are women. And also, the income increase ranges from between 45% in agriculture sectors to 90% in, say, a waste management sector. What this story looks like in the communities is our investment into a waste management company in Kerala has converted, when we started investing, it was some 500 jobs for women who were rag pickers, who were literally rag pickers in the communities, and they were converted, trained into sanitation workers. These are not mere words. For that person, for that woman, it is coming from tattered clothes to having a uniform. Having a uniform to say I'm a uniformed sanitation worker, having gloves, having those masks, the kind of dignity that she gets in her own community, in her own family, is beyond just the income increase, which is also obviously an agency for her to unlock access to food, healthcare, education, etc. But those are the transformational stories we look at, which is where the catalytic philanthropic capital we are seeing move the spectrum of finance, so to say, from philanthropy to now commercial. So some of the companies have grown big to attract commercial capital after this, over years, obviously. Or we have secured 10 exits now. If you ask a VC, if there are any Silicon Valley friends here, this is like something everyone is chasing. But this is also the same pattern that Ruth was mentioning or Rina is mentioning, where communities give back. These are missing middle companies and they gave back. And this is where the recyclability of the capital is what we've demonstrated. And now with that capital, we are able to reinvest similar companies or more. So this is where, Sachi, this is how Upaya works in terms of catalytic capital and also catalyzing the kind of capitals that the entrepreneur needs at different stage of their growth, and not just something which doesn't talk to the model per se or the need per se.
Thank you for that, Shruti. Now, I can't believe how quickly time has gone by, and I really wanted to allow our panelists to really dive deeper into their models and all the innovative work they're doing. If I may, I'd like to move into a lightning round where I would love to pose this question, but I may have to trim it just to allow us enough time to take Q&A from our audience. And so this last question for all of you is, if you can talk about the challenges you face in actually instituting these locally led bottoms-up solutions. So based on your lived experiences, what are those barriers? And do you have any recommendations or any asks of your stakeholders and in ways that they can assist and really help you do this work so much more easily and effectively? And maybe Shruti, I will start with you.
Thank you. And I'll be real quick. I think the biggest challenge and also a place that we need to work on is trust building. While local leadership, shifting the power dynamics is great, but I think what we need to acknowledge is that there still is a lot of trust building that needs to be done at each level including the funders or the communities or the entrepreneurs we work with, where the trust into local systems, and that is something that what I want to say to this group is that we can't take it for granted that there's a shift happened and now it'll plug and play. There's so much work that goes into just building the trust within our ecosystems to say that this is possible, this is how it'll work. The processes may look a bit different, but they are more aligned. But this takes work.
Thank you. Ruth, over to you.
Thanks. Well, I firmly believe that sustainable development cannot be achieved solely through top-down initiatives. Years of experience has shown that when solutions are imposed without fully understanding the local context, they often fail to achieve the intended impact. And also misalignment between centrally designed programs and the reality on the ground can lead to inefficiencies, mistrust that you mentioned, and even resistance from the very community we're aiming to serve. So, but also, as much as I believe in bottom-up development, I also recognize that, well, it's also brings challenges. And one of the biggest challenge in changing that approach can be also the fact that some of the development institutions or communities have difficulties to change their path and the way they are doing things. Institutions often find it hard to embrace more inclusive or locally driven approaches, while communities may need more time or support to adapt to new financial tools, for example. And you mentioned trust. Trust can also be an issue, especially for marginalized groups like women. And with the limited resources in rural areas, it can also prevent from making solution scale. And on top of that, I think that finding the right balance between giving communities autonomy, but also ensuring strong accountability for managing external loans, for example, in the case of the fast loan, is quite a delicate process. So my recommendations will be, well, to listen first and act second, because I think that organizations must begin with active listening to their community's needs, priorities, but also cultural nuances before designing and implementing an intervention. The last recommendation would be to build on local capacity, but also promote resilience. As I mentioned, with the fast loans, we have decided to cap it at 50% of the group previous cycle share out. That ensures that loan remain manageable for the group, while we have that group accountability and that they're sharing some kind of responsibility internally for repayment. Adding to that, and I will end with it, that our embedded financial education equips members to handle external funds wisely. And also ongoing training for field officers help prevent some risk like over-indebtedness, non-repayment, and fraud. So these measures collectively build trust, but also strengthen community resilience.
Thank you, Ruth. And over to you, Rina, for closing comments.
Yeah. So I think both Shruti and Ruth have covered. So I think at the heart of locally led development, what is the shift in power relationships. So this means like we need to move beyond, like we say, the token participation to truly granting local stakeholders the authority to make decisions and implement solutions in their own way. So it's about like what Shruti was talking about, trusting the community. because they know what works for them, and providing them the resources, the space that is needed, and support that is needed for them to succeed. The other thing which I think, Sachi, is a hurdle in this locally led development is the lack of patience that is inherent in the system. Development takes time, and there are no quick fixes. We all know this. But however, if you look at most of the projects, that are there, are all short term. Say 3 to 5 years, but which does not align, as we see and we all development professionals know, with the deep systemic changes that we are aiming to achieve. So I think to truly have locally led solutions, we need structures that allow for, like Ruth was talking about, the flexibility, the long term engagement. And the other thing, like, is very important, is like, and like my message, like you're asking, for the funders, would be like adopting a mindset of partnership, I think, rather than oversight. That is what is needed. And for all of us, colleagues and peers, like, the message is involve in active listening and co-creating solutions. So this is what I think is very important, because the communities knows what work best for them. So with that, I hand it over to you, Sachi.
Brilliant. Gosh, I just love this. And I know that we could keep talking. I think my hardest job today is trying to keep all of this short to allow room for Q&A, because I'm sure our audience has much that they would like to dive into. So Julia, maybe I will invite you back, and my colleague Julia has agreed to help monitor the Q&A for us.
Yes, thank you so much, Sachi, and big thank you to all of our panelists. Really interesting conversation. We have a number of questions. We'll see how many we can get to. And if you're in our audience, feel free to submit in the Q&A function in Zoom. And if we don't get to your question, you can find our speakers in the Whova app and send them messages. Our first question is for Ruth. So Ruth, you just spoke a bit about capacity building, ensuring accountability for programs, and then trainings, while all the while still balancing and promoting local autonomy. Can you share some examples of where you've seen this done well, or any tips for people who might be, planning trainings or different capacity building programs?
So the methodology for the training needs to be adapted to the target, the people that you want to train. What we have decided, based on the realities that we have for the people that we are trying to empower, that we are dealing with people sometimes that are illiterate. So we are using embedded education as our methodology. So it will really depend on your target and on your realities. And also the topics that we are tackling follows a certain path. I was mentioning the Thrive program, for example. In that Thrive program, we have different topics and different modules that follows a certain path, as I mentioned. We have first the biblical empowered worldview, in which module where households are opening their mind into new perspectives. After that, then comes the training on saving for transformation, because now we know that we are dealing with people that have a different mindset and that can understand that investing and saving is not just okay, I'm putting a certain amount of money so that I can get it at the end, a bigger one. No, I'm putting a certain amount of money so that at the end I can get something that I can invest to have something bigger. It needs to be understood by following that path that I was explaining. After the savings for transformation module, we then have what we call the local value chain development training, where also we are providing information to those people on what they actually can invest on. So yes, that's can be an example of how you can design and adapt the kind of training that you are providing to actually the target that you want to reach.
Great. Thank you, Ruth. Rina and Shruti, this next question is for both of you. All of our panelists today spoke about the importance of trust building and addressing power dynamics. Can both of you share a bit of what are some practical ways to build that trust, or what are some steps that you recommend people take on that journey? Rina, let's start with you, and then Shruti, you can follow.
I think most important is having authentic conversations and really, understanding the ground realities. Once this thing is there, the others can, follow. So I feel that this is the most important thing that needs to happen.
Yeah, I think well said, Rina. From my side, just to add on what Rina said, I think data plays a big role here in building and garnering everyone around what the system should be, what is the output we are working towards. So I think in our experience, evidence and data has helped us in building that trust much more effectively and in a more time effective way, apart from obviously having chance to do authentic conversations. I think, yeah.
Thank you for sharing. I'll ask one more question, and Sachi, this one's going to be for you, and then you can transition us into wrapping up after you answer. But from your experience, what additional suggestions would you add to what we discussed today? Or are there any challenges you want people to be mindful of that maybe we did not get the chance to cover?
Well, first of all, I think our panelists just really did a brilliant job of covering so much ground in a short amount of time. And I don't think there is anything I personally feel that was not touched on. However, I do want to really maybe extend on a point that Rina made at the very end, and that is patience and taking the long view. Because all of us here, I think most of us here, have been very much involved in community-led development and economic development, especially in some very challenging geographies. And whether it is lack of having very solid infrastructure, whether it's socio-political challenges, or now climate events are getting more and more frequent, you just have so many external factors that are working against you. And so what I would like to advocate for is much stronger partnerships and much more of a patient mindset to really see solutions all the way through. In the past work that I have done, I have often said to my teams, let's adopt a rapid prototyping approach, which I know is a term frequently thrown around in tech, which is kind of the world I inhabit now. But I think it's a very useful mindset to go in, not assuming you know what the solution is, but trying on a small scale, seeing what works, always adjusting, accounting for the points of failure, and just redefining, reimagining until you start to hit your stride. And what I would love for all supporting stakeholders like funders and board members and just external communities that are interested in this work to really take away is to have that patience mindset, come in with a spirit of partnership, and just be very open and flexible with adapting at all times. But thank you for turning that question back to me. I think in the interest of time, we should wrap up so that folks can get going to other sessions. I just really, really want to deeply, sincerely thank all three of our speakers today. They are all joining us pretty late in the night, their local time. And so they made great effort to be here. And as you can tell, They are just doing so much compelling work. And again, thank you for sharing your insights with us. Julia, I want to thank you also for just helping me keep an eye on Q&A and fielding that so well. And thank you to our audience for just being so rapt at attention, especially if you're in the Pacific time. I know this is pretty early. So really thank you for joining. I would invite all of you to connect with our speakers on LinkedIn and through the Whova app, where if we didn't get to your questions, you should feel free to ping our panelists, especially through Whova, and I'm sure they will be willing to answer and connect. And be sure to connect with other Goalmakers virtual sessions today and tomorrow in person if you are here in Seattle. Thank you so much for joining us.
Wonderful. And a big thank you to you, Sachi, for leading such a interesting, engaging conversation.